Welcome to Start Lines and Swag Bags, presented by the Flying Pig Project. The airing of this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to replace advice from any medical, professional, or training staff. The Flying Pig Project is not affiliated with or in partnership with any other business, running clubs, coaches, or medical professionals. Thank you for listening and your support.
Hello. Welcome to Start Lines and Swag Bags for this week, where if you're watching, your question may be, do you ever change your shirt, Rachel? Okay, listen. So I did record 3 intros on the same day. Okay. This episode was actually in the making for the past 3 months. This is another one, especially with marathon season coming up and people choosing, if they are able, to maybe work with a coach to help them reach their goals. Now, if you remember back, I did have Catherine on the show. She is an avid runner. She is also a coach, and we talked about coach-athlete relationships and how they are critical really to the success of you and your coach. So this episode, we see Sabrina. We've talked to her before. She's the founder of the Skokie Swifters, but she also works with John, who you've seen on the show too. And they have their own run coaching. It's not a company. You'll hear her tell you what it's called. Because I haven't replayed the episode because I know that episode is probably going to make me cry. Sabrina brought 2 of her athletes, Jake and Leah, onto the show. She coached both of them through their first marathons and also coached Leah to do back-to-back marathons. She did Chicago and Every Women's Marathon last year. We talk about how she coached them through some injuries and other challenges, but about halfway through the episode, it really became clear the bond between this coach and her athletes and how that affected their desire, their perseverance to reach their goals. Both of them openly admitted that even though they knew Sabrina, if Sabrina actually hadn't become an RCCA registered coach, then they probably wouldn't have sought a coach out. Jake goes so far as to admit he probably never would have run the marathon, and he wouldn't be jumping back into running now after a short break. Leah reports the same thing because, coaches are wonderful to have if you find the right one and if you have the means. We acknowledge not everybody can necessarily afford to hire a coach, which is why, of course, we talk about community and running with people that, you have built relationships with, that maybe know your personal life, that, understand that, you're having a bad run that day. You're blaming yourself, but they maybe know that, the week at work had been really hard and that's putting some pressure on you, and they can help you, do a mental course correction. Just how important it is to have people there supporting whatever path you have put yourself on. It's such a lovely episode, and they're all lovely people, and I really hope you enjoy it. As always, thank you for supporting, my little thing here, the Flying Pig Project. As this podcast grows, Start Lines and Swag Bags started off in my living room one day and me interviewing someone, and I'm so proud of what it's become, and thrilled to be able to have these conversations with people, because sometimes I think they help me more than they help you. That being said, embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. Please enjoy. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Start Lines and Swag Bags. The question today is, I'm going to do an intro. Do I keep it? Do I trash it? And really,
will you know? Now, I have three faces staring at me right now that you don't see yet. One's laughing at me, the other one's giggling, and the other one's kind of stone faced. Not quite sure what's happening. But I have brought three people on today to talk about the relationship between athletes and their coach. And this is piggybacking on a couple other episodes we're doing right now because we are just a few weeks away from people jumping into those 18-week marathon plans. Some do these plans with a coach and some do them without a coach. There's no right and no wrong, but let's get the vantage point of a couple people who did use a coach. First, let's welcome back. I'm so glad to have her back. My co-conspirator when it comes to firefighters and felines, uh, Coach Sabrina. Coach Sabrina, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's really great to be back. I just am a little sad that I'm not seeing the calendar of our firefighters and felines behind you. That would make for a great backdrop. But I'll just keep talking while Rachel gets over her giggling fit that she's now enduring. Thank you for having me again. It's always fun to come on with you and chat about a variety of things. And I'm especially excited today because I've got two of my amazing athletes here that I've worked with for going on 2 years now. I've got Leah and Jake, and they are friends, they are Swifters, they are a multitude of things to me. But right now, today, we're going to focus on them having been my athletes. So I've worked with both of them through a couple of training cycles. Leia's biggest accomplishment in the last year has been back-to-back marathons, which she did most successfully. She ran Chicago, and then a few weeks later, she ran the Every Woman's Marathon in Savannah. And then Jake has worked with me for a little bit longer than that at this point, but his biggest accomplishment has been running the Chicago Marathon as well. And so I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about their running histories, and then we'll turn it back to Rachel.
Who
Leah,
wants
you're
to go
first.
Hi, guys. Okay, so Rachel said a little bit about running story and then how I got into coaching. I'm the kind of kid who always hated gym, running is a punishment, all the rest, all that good stuff. I started running a little bit about 15 years ago when I was in graduate school, and then I finished school. I got a full-time job and long commutes, and I just didn't get back into it. I always said that when I didn't have a commute and I had more time, I was going to get back into running. And then we had a pandemic, and I did have a treadmill in my basement, and I still didn't run. Um, until work said, guys, we're good. You're coming back into the office. And I said, oh crap, here's my 3 months. I gotta get on it. And I did a couch to 5K for the Bucktown race, which I had done in my previous running life. And it was amazing. And I realized I'm not intrinsically motivated to keep running. And so I signed up for a couple more races. It also still took me like a year of stalking the Skokie Swifters before I actually was willing to show up. And my first time I showed up was actually on my birthday and Megan's birthday too. And it was like fate. So because I know that I'm not intrinsically self-motivated, I was like, hey, once I learned that Sabrina was a coach and has had a coach, I really thought, I mean, like, I guess that's a thing that normal humans do. Because I thought that only, I don't know, people who really loved running the most. I didn't realize at the time that I guess I also really love running a lot. And I think being around so many other people who had run marathons at different ages, stages, body sizes, busyness levels really motivated me to want to run my first marathon. And then because I had never run my first marathon, I decided to run 2 5 weeks apart because I didn't know what any of this meant. And I realized that I didn't want to destroy my body. And the way to not do that was to have a coach help me through it. So that's bringing you up to speed, I guess.
Okay, so one of the things that you said, you said two words that, of course, catch my attention. It's always the intrinsic motivation. I'm very familiar with intrinsic motivation. I don't have any. I really, I, I've made that no, like, I haven't lied about that ever. I'm not intrinsically motivated. So I like that you were able to bring that to the table, because I think that's something that may come up again, but is always a topic that I think should come up in every podcast when we talk about running, marathon training, all of that. All right, Jake, you ready?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I've been running for about 10 years now. My running journey has been, starts and stops along the way. I, I like Leah, I hated running when I was like younger. I was into other athletic things, but I quit track my sophomore year of high school because I just realized I didn't like running. But in my adult life, I was kind of looking for a way to just get fit after many years of being super sedentary. And my partner at the time had just run the Chicago Women's Half Marathon, and that to me that was just like, holy crap, you like I was just a half marathon was mind blowing to me. And when she decided to do another one, I was like, oh, you think that's something like I could do? Like, she was like, well, yeah, if you train for it, if I could do it, you could definitely do it. So that was my first race. I think I probably did some, shorter races during my training for that, but it was all just a Hal Higdon spreadsheet that I found online. And that was kind of how I ran for, I don't know, the next like 6 or so years of just kind of mostly running recreationally, but then picking a few races here and there and occasionally, doing a Hal Higdon thing. Up until I suffered a stress fracture training for what was supposed to be my first big half after the first one, which was a Star Wars half marathon in Disneyland. And 2 weeks before the race, something was wrong, and I went to the doctor, and I had a stress reaction that was on the verge of being a full-blown stress fracture, and I didn't get to run the race. So that was like the beginning of one of like the down periods of running. Like, I was still kind of getting out there, getting some miles in from time to time, but like I was really nervous uh about training hard and pushing myself, because there was like some misplaced guilt kind of even about like, that I still deal with when I'm training for races, about not doing all the other stuff alongside running that I'm supposed to be doing to stay healthy. But so that kind of like brings us to the pandemic, where like I'd been running consistently, but not particularly in a structured or intentional way. And I needed something to do. So I started doing all these, like, I had actually like planned on getting back into it. Like that year, I had signed up for a half marathon, the North Shore Classic, and that all fell apart. And so I think, like a lot of people, I was just kind of like, this is a great way to get out of the house and spend some time. And it's good for me, and it's good for my brain. And then as the pandemic thawed, a friend shared an Instagram post with me about the Skokie Swifters. And that like kicked things into high gear. All of a sudden, like, I realized that running wasn't this, like, I'd always been afraid to run with other people, because I'm like, oh no, this is like a solitary thing I do by myself. This is like my me time. And it's still that sometimes, but I learned that, oh, actually, I really like running with other people. It's a great social activity. It's super motivating, and seeing what other people are doing and hearing about their struggles and their successes is just, I guess it's a long way of saying I discovered the community aspect of running. And that is also how I met Sabrina and became friends. And it came time for me to do my first marathon.
Like, it's part of everybody's plan, right? Like, and then the time for my first marathon arrived. It's
Yeah.
Chapter 14 in my life
Right.
story.
Well, this reminds me of one thing that I forgot to say, which is I think I blame Jake for making it look like it was possible in part way.
Aha.
Well, I don't know who I blame for that. But there's somebody that convinced me, because I was adamant for a long time. Like, I had zero interest in running a marathon. It was just not something that was even remotely appealing to me. And then uh, some stuff got crazy. My marriage fell apart, and I needed something to focus on while I was going through that massive change. And I decided, like, if not now, it's never going to happen. So this is when I'm going to run a marathon. And I knew I had trained with structure before, but it always been like on virtual coach or a training plan or something. And I knew that was not going to be what um, was going to get me to the finish line of a marathon. And that I needed accountability. I needed someone with a lot more know-how and uh, the ability to, like, respond to how things were going, which you don't really get with a virtual coach or a cookie cutter training plan. And so naturally, Sabrina was the person I went to for that. And I can say it wouldn't have happened if I had tried to train with myself. I ended up with a pretty um, sucky injury right at the end of training that didn't keep me from completing the race. But I know 100% if I didn't have a coach and if I didn't have Sabrina there to keep me hopeful and keep me focused on what I could do and not, like, just giving in to despair because we still had 3 weeks to figure this out, I would have given up. Like, I would have said, nope. I mean, for one thing, I would have gone to a doctor, which I'm not advocating not going to the doctor when you're injured. But I mean, we all know what's going to happen with that kind of injury 3 weeks before a marathon. A doctor is going to say, don't run the marathon. Like, that is their best advice, and that's the advice they should give. But we know as runners that we don't always do the best thing for us. And especially 3 weeks out from something that was, like, so important to me, especially at that time, like, getting across that finish line carried so much other symbolism and significance for me. And we had to do it, and walk, run, or crawl. We were going to figure out how it was going to happen, and that wouldn't have happened without a coach in my corner to back me up.
So many things. One, I almost thought while you were saying that we should have made like an over under bet at what time Sabrina may start to tear up during this episode, because I think I saw a little of it then. Um, this is also making me remember how much I love doing like 4-person episodes, whereas they are much more difficult on the editing side. It's always very interesting to have one person talk, and the other three of us have a range of facial expressions. And technically, sometimes when the editing gets done, like, it would just be Jake talking, and it wouldn't necessarily be all of our faces along with it, because how could he see what we're all doing? So that cracked me up. But what I really want to say, especially, I've done 2 episodes back to back. I did one yesterday, one today. And as probably the only person besides Marty who has actually listened to every single one of my episodes, um, I know people don't necessarily have the time to devote to doing that. But if I had to create like oh, Sabrina, help me, you know what it is, the word cloud,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's the
word,
word
oh,
cloud, right? Where you just,
word
like,
cloud.
you have the emphasis on the words that get said or referenced more often, right? Are bigger. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The number one word would be community. And it's interesting because it comes out of everybody at some point in the conversation. They don't realize it. I don't have to pry it out of them. It all comes down to the running community. And it's really when you listen to everybody's backstories that you realize, or I realize, because I've heard everybody's story, how really I make a lot of mention to we are all the same, even though we are different. We really don't understand how much we are the same sometimes, even though we are all on different paths, on different journeys. Um, the 14th chapter had Jake running a marathon.
Should have been the 26th chapter, Sabrina. Come on, references. Jesus.
I'm somewhere in the appendix. I don't know where yet.
Yeah, but we
Or
have
the
heard you say marathon
I know.
possibility. So wait,
And
can I just say something to the community piece?
of course.
Yeah, I think so one thing I should have backtracked to say is that so my coaching has come out of me getting certified as a Roadrunners Club of America run coach, and that was something I did when I went on leave from my full-time job as a teacher 2 years ago. That was one thing I wanted to get because I knew that part of my years away from the classroom I wanted to spend more in the running industry, and that included becoming more of, like, I had been coaching before. I've coached cross country, but I wanted to get more seriously involved with coaching adults. So, both Leah and Jake have mentioned that they found the Swifters, and then that's how they came to coaching with me or to working with me. And I should say that myself and another Swifter, John, who's been on the podcast, we don't call it a business, but we call it like a service called Stay Swifty, Stay You Coaching Services. And while most of the people that we work with are Swifters, there's a few that are not. And that's even the community within the community. Like, it's getting very meta right now. But, I would say last summer we had about 20 athletes that were training for various races. But within that athlete community is another place that you can find support, right? So if you have a coach that's, that doesn't live around here or whatever, like they're more virtual, which is in my case, my coach lives in California. That's wonderful. And there's also like a team community aspect with that online. But just the fact that there's this like separate kind of, not, it's not Swifters only, like I said, but it is kind of a smaller community where these people are going through a lot of the same things. So to your point about, we have more things that are the same sometimes than we realize, I think that's part of where that support comes from. So it's not just, I am grateful that these two athletes have felt so supported by me. And I also want to give credit to like the athletes as a whole, because then they can chat about, oh, this was my experience on this workout she gave me. Or like, don't you hate her because she made me do this many 800s? And like, and I say that in jest, but I think it's also part of the point is that you make those connections and then your own training and your own running gets easier in a way too, both physically and mentally.
And I'm going to piggyback on your comment because you were piggybacking on the fact that you claimed that I said that sometime I trained for a marathon. And that has been, and I actually think I said that on with the person I was with yesterday. And when that episode drops, you'll understand why. But at the same time, um, I won't lie. I'm jealous of this episode only because, location wise, I mean, you guys aren't that far from me. I've made jokes about that forever and a day. But definitely, and this is a question I was going to ask the two athletes, but I'm going to ask them earlier. Um, you know, do you think your experience was enhanced by the fact that um, your coach, and it really was it wasn't the Swifters, but it came out of the Swifters. What part do you think that played in your ultimate success? Either one of you can jump in first.
It coming out of Swifters or the
Well,
community, so the
I,
coaching community.
I think because, for example, if I were to say to Sabrina, all right, let's go, she can send me, a plan, but probably most of it I would not be able to, come out and participate with you all with, it's a geographical, not challenge, but it's different. I'd have to do a lot of it on my own. So whereas I still have Sabrina and everything that Sabrina brings, which is all wonderful things, there's still an issue of distance. So I guess the question is, do you think that if Sabrina had not been that accessible to you physically, does that sound right? What? What?
So I actually think it's a yes and no. So I think, so for me, I almost never make it on Tuesday nights. I have two kids who don't like to hang out with me, but we'll all have dinner together. I mean, like what? They want to watch TV. It's fine. I do too. But so that's 6 to 6:20 at my house is really important to me. It means I don't make it to Swifters on Tuesday nights that often. And frankly, as you were saying this, Rachel, I was thinking back to summer training and I missed a lot of the Saturday morning runs. And I desperately started to miss the community of runners that I would spend Saturday mornings with because I had to adjust my schedule in order to make sure I was getting the number of miles in. And so I couldn't always sync up to run with them either at 8 or to meet them at 9 o'clock for coffee. Now, that said, um, Tuesday mornings became intensely like community based because Tuesday mornings at 6 a.m., you have to be really driven and able to adjust your schedule to make that a possibility. And knowing that there were these couple other people who I was going to see was really phenomenal. Um, so it's a yes and no. I do also think that when I run like Harm's Woods and I've run past or next to or whatever, I don't know, I don't know what the word is. Other people who I knew were also training for the same races that I was training for or similar timing because they were also not just Swifters but part of the run coach community. Like that was lovely. But again, this is like a 2-minute wave, 30-second wave or something that we're talking about. It's not like this is not like intensive people. It's an intensely individual process because we're all running at the paces that are right for us, that our coach has determined what are going to get us to our ultimate goal, whatever that might look like. And then the last thing is, like Jake, I didn't do all the other things I was supposed to do while marathon training. But I did go to the doctor. And so 5 weeks before my first marathon, I was in a boot. And the month that was supposed to be my peak training was my lowest training of the training cycle, like month. And I missed my 20-mile long run before the marathon. And I came out because all my friends were still running the 20 miles. And I had actually gotten really good news the day before, like that I was clear to start running again. And that was really incredibly special. It was also great because, I had Jake, who had been through something worse in terms of proximity timing, to say, you know what, you're going to get to the finish line. It's going to happen. I remember also around that time, I saw Rebecca, who also has been, I think, on the show. And she was like really nervous. She's like, oh my God, how can I do this? Like, I'm so scared. And I looked at her, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I've been seeing what you've been doing. You've been doing everything. Of course you're going to finish. I no guarantees that you're going to make the time that you want, but you're going to finish. And she said later that she was like so like impressed that I was so like nonchalant, like, of course this was going to happen. I didn't even let it enter into my brain that it wasn't going to happen. Finishing. How we got there was totally up in the air. But it was going to happen because we had everybody running with us and running, metaphorically, running around the city with signs.
Jake, I'm going to give you, I'm going to throw it back to you, but to piggyback on Leah, I'm sorry. It's going to happen 5 more times. Yesterday, I was talking to someone about the fact that, when we talk about communities, there are different types of communities. There's a community like the Swifters where, it's a group, we know a lot about each other, we hang out and all of this. But if I go on any given day over to Bussy Woods, I'm probably going to find, well, especially at this time, in a few weeks, 30 or 40 people that I know. And they are not all from my racing teams. They are people that I know because of other reasons. And, I made the comment that, if I were to go repetitively and even if it's just a higher, whatever, that's still your community. Those are people that still, I mean, just to take the time and wave at you, or, maybe check in on somebody. Hey, I know I didn't have a chance to talk, but I didn't see you this morning. Is everything okay? It's a different kind of community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I before we throw it to Jake, I just wanted to point out that my favorite way to think about Leah, because she highlighted this in her comment just now about Rebecca, where Leah was like, "Of course you're gonna finish, so happy, and everything's great and wonderful all the time." Um, but there's a reel on Instagram of this lion that is like proudly, like slowly walking, like he's stalking, and at the top it says like most runners when they get to the start line of a marathon, and this lion is just like prowling. And then in the next clip it's like me when I get to the start line, and this little dog that's like hopping around like it's so happy, and I'm like, that's Leah. Leah's the dog. She's like, I'm happy to be here. And like, you know, I hope you take that as a compliment, Leah, because I think ultimately
I totally do.
good, because
Let me tell you about mile 20 in the Chicago Marathon, where I was like, I started crying after mile 18 because I was like, I have never done this before. I have never run this many miles before. This
Yeah.
is amazing. And I was like stopping because I was in pain, whatever. And people are like, you can do it. And I was like, I am doing it. What are you talking about? You think that this isn't me doing it? This is me doing it. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And good. I'm glad you take it that way, because I think that's one of your biggest assets as a runner is your ability to recognize that there might be a challenge, or recognize that maybe there is this obstacle, but your mental like toughness and your mental strength when it comes to positivity is just like unlike any others I've seen. And I think that's something that has led you to be so successful. And so when we see Leia's smile, like we should take that and try to put it into ourselves too, because that's the thing that I think a lot of us struggle with, especially in the harder miles. If we're talking about a marathon and those last miles, it's so hard to stay in that positive zone. And you just really exemplify that. So I just want to shout you out for that. You are that little dog. It's just hopping
It's
along.
much more a much more healthy approach than mine, which is to like get really, really paranoid like 2 weeks before every race that I've completely screwed up my training, and then I'm gonna that something is hurt. And that way when I get to the race, like everything is gravy, everything is better than expected. I don't consciously do that, but that has turned out to be just because of a series of annoying injuries close to races. That has become kind of my MO, is like freaking out a little bit before every race just because something is not optimal. And then on race day it's like, it was like, well, like this, everything is turning out better than I expected because I set the bar so low, from not in terms of like achievements, but in terms of like how my body's going to feel on race day. And am I going to be able to like just get through the basics? And then I get out there and it's like, yeah, I freaking trained for this. Like, like people always say, trust the process, trust your program. And like, it is definitely helpful to have a coach there, like keeping some of those tendencies at bay.
This is why
But
you have to
also I
train
know
for 2
myself, so
races at the same time.
yeah. Well, that is basically what I'm doing this year. My goal.
Me
My goal.
too. I'm copying you.
Yeah. My.
Welcome
my
to
first
my
half
training season, guys.
But my first half marathon was in the pouring rain, and I was miserable, and I was like, this sucks. This is the worst thing ever. And I'd done the Hal Higdon, and that's when I saw you dedicating yourself to Chicago. And it was raining and it was awful. And I was like, I hate this. And so I signed up to run the Indy half 2 weeks
I
later.
hate this, but I signed up to run.
So I signed up for another one immediately.
I didn't want to waste all my training, man.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's also when I really grouped into, like, really understood the benefit of community and finishing a race, not by myself, because the other one was in the pouring rain. It was by myself. And this one, like having my friends and running backward in order to see my friends finish their races at their paces. Like, it was unbelievable.
All right. So, Jake, if you wonder why sometimes these episodes do take on a life of themselves, I'm going to throw it to you now to answer the question. If you
I don't
need me
remember
to
what
repeat,
the question was.
Community.
Community. I mean, my experience echoes Leia's a lot in that, like, when I was in the depth of training, I was running by myself more than ever because, um, there just weren't that many people at my pace running the kind of miles that I was running. And yeah, I would come for coffee sometimes on the Saturdays, but I was hitting those long runs on my own most of the time, just because um no, there wasn't anybody that was getting up that early to run that far with me. And then yeah, during the week, it's like getting up early to beat the sun. Like there were times where Sabrina or someone else would drop in for a few miles with me, and I'd have some community there. But the real connections there was Tuesday mornings. Not only because all of us that were getting coached were showing up along with other people, but those were the workouts that we were complaining about afterwards, and like comparing like what did she give you this week and stuff like that. So but I think like where the community comes through on that sort of um situation is the cheering people on. And it's like I never had somebody come cheer for me at a race before I joined the Swifters. And one of the like seminal like bonding moments for joining the Swifters was taking a trip down to cheer Terrence on for his first half marathon. And like that just fueled something, like knowing that and then I think it was probably just a couple months later that I actually successfully ran my first half marathon. That was like a big deal. I'd literally been afraid to even train for a half marathon because of injuring myself on the last two. And folks knew that and came out and cheered me on all the way to the finish. And um, it changes running, I think, when it's not. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there still that don't want to be part of the community, and like what they get out of it is something internal and individual. But I don't think I would have done half of what I've done running wise if I had continued to approach it that way.
One of the things that I want to bring up at this point is we're talking about training cycles, really at this time of year right now, because everybody's amping up for us locally. It could be the Chicago Marathon, it could be the Lakefront Marathon, Lakefront up in Wisconsin. It's all those fall marathons. But coaching is not just for marathon training. Because Jake, you have brought up a couple times when we talk about like half marathon. And to a lot of people, half marathon is their marathon. To some people, a 10K is their marathon. A 5K is their marathon. And I think I just want to throw that in real quick so that, people who listen to this particular episode, well, maybe that doesn't apply to me because I'm not interested in a marathon. It's not about that. It's about using the community, using the coach for whatever your individual goal happens to be. Today, we're focusing on the marathon as a goal. For a lot of people, the goal is different.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Either Leah and I are training for full marathons this year, right? We're training for halves. I was thinking about that earlier, actually. Just that I wanted to say so basically the same thing, that like this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sabrina. I was trying to remember. Did I actually train with you for a shorter race before the marathon, or the marathon was?
No, but you did Hidden Gem and
Yes.
crushed it as a part of your marathon training.
Yes. Crushed it, and maybe also contributed to the subsequent injury.
Okay, but you crushed it.
So then Jake, I'm blaming Hidden Gem because it was right after Hidden Gem that my injury came. I'm just, it's those hills. It's the downstate hills.
It's the hills.
hills in
Yes, there are. If you're from Skokie, there are hills in Homewood Flossmoor.
First
but yeah,
of all,
so this summer, this race will be my first time getting coaching for something shorter than a half.
And I'm so excited for the workouts.
And
wait, what are you training
because
for?
I took some time off from running last year, and I'm like checking my Strava fitness stats and stuff, and like seeing how it compares to 2 years ago as I was ramping up. Just as kind of like a gauge. I don't put a lot of stock into that because it's a black box and I don't know what it's actually measuring, but it's a benchmark, and I keep thinking like, oh, I'm a little behind where I was. Like that means it's going to be a little tougher to train. And I have to keep reminding myself that I'm training as long for this half as I did for the marathon. So the ultimate race that I'm running for is going to be like 4 or 5 weeks extra training compared to the half I crushed during my marathon training. And like, um,
And I'll just say it's a different set of training. Like
yeah,
what you said before, Rachel, about people can be training for whatever distance to have a coach. They can also just be, and I know this is pretty cliche, but training for life. I'm working with several athletes right now that do not have a race on their calendar, or at least they don't have one for a while. And some of them are really just wanting base. They want consistency. That's what their goal is, right? They want to have somebody who they're accountable to, that is saying, go out and do these workouts and just improving fitness overall, right? It doesn't always have to be a race. And then just to your point, Jake, about the training too, like training for different races requires different training. Like, I know that sounds redundant, but um, you know, jokingly, I can't wait to give you some of these half marathon workouts. But the point is that we approach it as coaches, we approach that differently than we would if you were training for a full, or if you were training for a 5K. And so, I think every season is different also. You're coming into this a different person than you were the last time, different life circumstances for everybody. And I think we just have to, one thing that's so important, I think, especially in the coach athlete relationship, is I know not everybody is going to get to the point where maybe they see their coach as their like friend. Also, I think to your point about geography, Rachel, like it's beneficial to us that we all live in similar areas here, because we can also be we can also have a relationship outside of coach athlete. We can also have friend relationship. Um, but my point is just that if you do have that ability to get closer to your coach in that regard, it's important to share those things as they come up, right? Like I think we maybe don't always talk about, oh, you had a bad run. Why do you think, oh, I slept poorly, or like I didn't eat well? Okay, but what happened at work yesterday? What happened? Did you have a disagreement with your spouse this morning? Like so many of these other things that we don't think contribute to running, they actually do. And I think a coach can help you recognize that also.
When
yeah. Sabrina's
I've
point about not necessarily, the different like non-race time coaching. Even like that's, I've been working with Sabrina since January again after some time off, and I have like my goal race is in October. That's the only race I have any plans toward training toward this year. And so since January, it's just been base building and building consistency. And that's what I needed. Like I keep saying I took time off of running. It wasn't like a choice. I was struggling to basically get back on track after um really struggling after my marathon. I caught COVID at the marathon, so I was not able to um recover and do the proper kind of post marathon training to recover properly. I was just on a couch for 3 weeks, on top of the injury that I wasn't able to continue. So it was really difficult. And over the spring after that, like my running really tailed off, and I was really struggling with intrinsic motivation to just get out the door and get any kind of running in. And I missed it. And I also was super aware of its absence in the other ways it benefits me in terms of managing stress and mental health, and what a key component of that part of my life running had become. And I desperately needed to get it back into the routine. And I knew that having a coach would help me with that, because just that little bit of accountability. I mean, just on the level of, I mean, I think everyone has experienced with trainers or gym memberships or everything. At some point, there's just that, like, I'm spending money on this now. It's a little bit more important, but also just the, like, I don't know, something about having somebody give you the plan, and like, I think taking that part of the cognitive load away is a little bit less friction. I don't have to think about how far am I going to run, or like, how far am I going to feel like going? Because I've got a plan in front of me, and it's like, cool. And then just, Sabrina is not the kind of coach that is like on my ass and like screaming at me. It's not the kind of motivation I would respond to anyway. But that's, obviously not her style.
I'm gonna bring up something that Sabrina, Team Sugar Run coach Catherine, who was on here a couple months ago. And, there's several things we talked about. She talked about how it's very important for her to work with athletes that have the same values as her, the same, if somebody's looking for something to be like a hard ass on them, that's not her coaching style, so she's not going to do it. There really does have to be that relationship between coach and client. So there has to be, trust me, there has to be that actual relationship between a coach and an athlete. As you are all talking about, I do think of the time I spent working with your coach, Sabrina, who I liked very much. I had a good rapport with her, but as I look back at that experience, and when we talk about, there are other things that impact your running. It is not just your foot hurts. It is, to Jake's point, because I've been where Jake is, you have a major life shift. You move. There's so, I mean, I could list them for hours. There's so many different factors you can throw in. And if you are not in a relationship with your coach, for lack of a better term, that you feel comfortable sharing all of that other information, that is going to affect the quality and what you get out of the coaching. It's gonna straight up affect it, no doubt. And now all of a sudden I need a coach to get me back started. But we'll talk about that after the podcast.
I was just going to say, I think to what we were talking about before, like the relationship aspect, like, the different training periods aspect, like life aspect. I was curious what Leah thought about that too, because I know she's had some challenges, we all have, right? And I think running is a way that Leah feels good about herself. Now I'm starting to speak for you, so I'm going to stop.
I was going to say, you're going to make me cry because I feel like you know me so well. Yeah, last summer was also really hard. I had like a friendship explosion that happened, and running really grounded me. I mean, both literally, but also metaphorically. It gives you a degree of structure, but at the same time, whenever I couldn't do a pace, I couldn't do something, I would just be honest. And the best part about working with a coach is not that if you fail a workout, you have failed or you are a failure. It's okay, just like, what did you learn? What would you do differently? So I remember one run, I don't know, my day got misordered, whatever. And I was like, I'm going to do a lunch run. It's going to be fine. It's a little hot, but like, it's going to be fine. And I didn't fuel properly. I didn't hydrate properly. And I just felt like crap. And I just walked the time, like I walked home. And I was like, that kind of sucked. And I just made a note of it. I was like, here's what happens. Like, and I'm not going to be able to make up the time. And it just didn't happen. I never, there's the accountability piece where I feel beholden to something, but I never felt guilty for trying and then having it fail, or for something happening in my real life that affected my running life. So I think that's one misconception perhaps that some people might hold about having a coach and what it means and what kind of goals you're working toward. Like, oh, you have to get X paces or be the speed or what have you. I really found having a coach with running meant that I was doing what I needed to do over the overarching several months to get me to where I needed to be. And like Jake said, like having someone else think about it and pre-program it and tell me exactly what to do and teach me how to program it in my watch so my watch would beep and tell me what to do. It allowed me to focus on what I wanted to be focusing on, which was getting the miles in, figuring out how that felt in my body to try different paces and trying different distances and different kinds of activities. It just gave me something really great to focus on. And I just kept focusing on how I felt emotionally in addition to physically, because physically, frankly, I just was so tired. Um, after I finished training, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like my body doesn't hurt and I don't fall asleep at 9 o'clock. How is this happening? And my, fountain of youth. And it's like, no, it's because you're not waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to run several miles and then commute for an hour and work a full work day and then commute another hour back and then parent and try to be a friend to other people. Like, oh,
Well, and I think like just to something you said that's I think important. You said this early on when we first started recording about you didn't, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but like you didn't think that maybe you needed a coach or that you were good enough, right? And I'm using that in quotes, or that you were
yeah.
fast enough. And that was a similar feeling for me when I first started working with a coach. And I think to your point about it doesn't have to be a certain pace, or like you're just going out there and you're doing what you can and you're feeling good about that. Like I think that's one of the key points about a coach too, is that if if they're a good coach, they will meet you where you are and they will build you to what those goals are. So I have a wide variety of people who I coach. One athlete is just getting back out there and starting with walks again, all the way to an athlete who has a goal to run a sub-3-hour marathon this fall. Like the range of people that I work with, which is also a good challenge for me. And I think that's something that coaches should seek out to do, is to make themselves more diversified in who they can coach, because you're learning from both of those types of runners and everybody in between. And then that ultimately benefits all of our athletes because of what we learn from those experiences we can then lend to you guys. And so I think it's an important point to emphasize that Leah made about, you can have whatever kind of goal you have, and that's worthy of itself.
Okay,
I
so
have
wait, Rachel, before we
good.
go on, I have to say the reason why I wanted Sabrina in particular to coach me is because of this degree of honesty and humility around marathon. So I was like, I met her at Swifters. I followed her on Instagram and Facebook or whatever, because, you're cool enough that I follow you.
Aw,
Um,
thanks.
and it was like right before you ran your 6-star in Japan. And then after that, I think you had signed up for another marathon and you didn't start. It was not the right place. I think this happened, right? In like
I was
Long
supposed
Beach
to
or
run
something?
Savannah.
Oh, no, this was before that. There was some race that you were supposed to run after Japan.
Orange County.
Yeah. So, and I'm from Orange County, so I think it stuck in my
Yes,
head.
that's right.
It just wasn't happening. And you just said that. You're like, this is not the right choice for me. And I was like, holy shit, you flew to a different state, you signed up for a race, and you didn't even start. Like, that requires a degree of self-confidence and self-knowledge that, like, people joke like, oh, you don't have to run that race. And I'm always like, I have to run the race. I signed up for it. And we might make fun of it, but it takes so much strength to also know this is not the time. This is not the race. This is not what I should be doing. And seeing you admit that. And I was like, you just got your 6-star. Like, I didn't even know what this was until 2 seconds ago. And you put so much investment in this additional race. And then you decided it wasn't the right choice. Like, that amount of bravery made me think, okay, like, this woman can coach me because she understands that you have to make the right decision for who you are and not who you want to be or who you thought you would be like 6 months ago when you signed up for that race. And that's okay. That doesn't devalue all of the other things that you've done to get up to this point. It doesn't make you less than at any point in time.
Thank you.
So thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing your running journey with us.
So if y'all could just stop reading my mind okay, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Um, to actually, Leah, directly to your point, I've mentioned a lot of times when I talk about the maturity of a runner, how the maturity of a runner has absolutely nothing to do with age in any way, shape, or form. The mature runner understands when they do need to back out. The mature runner understands that someone knows more than they do. There's so many different aspects, and you know, Sabrina is the epitome of that in every way. But here, and my question was going to be, but you kind of answered it. To me, finding a coach, let's just go down to the bare process. Someone decides they want to get a coach. And getting a coach is a lot like finding a doctor because you don't always hit it the first time. You could, and and I say this only because, and Sabrina and I have discussed this before as well, having a coach is a blessing that a lot of people are able to have. The availability of having a coach is not financially necessarily available to everyone as well. Um, so, when we're talking about maybe having to seek out two or three different people before you land on the correct person, that can be a daunting task. I know Sabrina does, I know Catherine does. Most coaches will offer like 30-minute or 45-minute like free introductory calls so that you can discuss your goals and see if they align with their coaching style. Um, so I guess the question there becomes both to Jake and Leah, you know, you decided you wanted Sabrina as a coach because you knew Sabrina. Okay. Do you think that if Sabrina hadn't crossed your path or Sabrina wasn't a coach, you know, would you have gotten a coach? Did you see do you see where I'm going with that?
For me, the answer is probably not. Um, for a couple of reasons. Because if I didn't know Sabrina, then definitely not. If Sabrina wasn't a coach, probably not. Because before Sabrina was coaching, we talked a lot on, I would hear a lot about her coach on our runs, and I'd hear a lot about her training plans and kind of her relationship with her coach. And there were times where I was like, oh, maybe I should try that sometime. I don't think I really would have, though. And to be honest with you, I also don't think I would have even considered running a marathon if I didn't know that, if I hadn't had Sabrina there to coach me. Like if Sabrina hadn't gotten certified and started coaching and my life had turned out the same way and I had the same motivation behind potentially running a marathon, I think I probably would have just like not done it and not found a coach, because um for me it really was like knowing Sabrina, knowing how she approaches running. I mean, and also just like the inherent trust that was already there from our friendship. Like, uh, I guess I am lucky because I've had the same doctor for 20 years. So like, I can't relate to that particular analogy, but like, I I don't think I would have sought out a coach. I really don't think I would have, like, if the first one didn't hit right, I don't think I would have like chased down and tried to find a coach that worked for me. I think I would have probably just been like, yeah, this isn't what I want.
Well, because you don't sometimes realize that that there are coaches who coach in different ways, and a lot of us we do something the first time. It's not a good experience. It could be a whole host of things, and it's are you willing, to try again? Um, Leah, what do you think?
I thought I wasn't a runner. I had been running for like a year and a half, and it has taken me a very long time to say that I'm a runner, not just a person who runs. Um, so I think that that mental block, like thinking I remember going to the doctor at one point and I already had low blood pressure and I have very low blood pressure now. This was, I think, during marathon training. So they're like, oh, well, you're an endurance athlete. I was like, what? what the hell are you talking about? Endurance athlete. Have you seen what I look like? Like, I'm not an endurance athlete. And I think that degree of imposter syndrome and doubt, self-doubt around what I really am, which is is a runner. I am a runner. I may not be the fastest. I'm not the slowest. Um, I'm not always the one who's working the hardest, but I am a runner. And I think that self doubt would have kept me from thinking that I like deserved a coach or I would benefit really from a coach.
And I realize, as I ask that question, this is a different coach athlete relationship podcast. We're talking about someone who created a community. See, I'm trying to do this and maybe I could make her cry. I don't know. This is someone
There's been
who,
some
you know,
tears. You just can't see them through the screen.
oh, but here's the thing. Well, you're going to like this one. So she created community. She created a very inclusive community. Okay. Where, even someone like me who, um, it's very rare to see me in person. I'm really the golden unicorn. Um, but I'm, it's still, this is, I mean, I have the tattoo. I'm part of the tribe. I'm the family. Hey, Jake's hold it up. You
Can't
don't
get
have to hold your leg
I was
up.
gonna say I can't get my leg that
Yeah,
high, and also we
it's
we
okay.
we have temporaries for people, and she has a sticker.
no sticker.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. You've created a community, and that's you didn't do this, but I'm gonna go there with this. Then you became a coach, but you already had a pool of available clients.
True. I mean, it's not wrong.
I know. Well, it's like I started a podcast, and I have two running clubs with 400 people, so I already have guests. But so this is a unique situation. Okay, it's unique because these are people who really did get to know you prior to taking on that coach role. Okay. You had established relationships. It's a whole different conversation, um, to really know. I mean, like I guess, do you have any current people you're working with that you did not actively know prior to you becoming a coach? And how does that look like?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question in just a second, but I just want to say something about these two athletes. So Jake, definitely I had more of an established friendship with before we started working together as a coach. Leah was becoming a friend, but I think, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that our friendship grew stronger because of our coach athlete relationship. Because I did not know her as well when we first started working together. And through this, I've gotten to know her better, which I'm really happy about because I think that, like I said before, I think that kind of relationship can help, um, with that comfortability and with that trust, um, between the coach and the athlete. And I'd like to think, ultimately makes them better runners. And you can define better however you want, but better in the sense that they're more consistent, or they got faster, or they feel more confident, right? Again, whatever your goal is valid. Um, so to answer your question, yes, I actually have somebody right now who I've been working with for a couple of months. They're going to be training for the Chicago Marathon this fall, and I really don't know them at all. They found us through one of our Swifters, but I did not know her beforehand. And we've met in person once to have our established meeting. And like you said, like an intake type of, consultation. She decided she wanted to come on board, and I've been getting to know her, but it is a different kind of coach athlete relationship than I have with these two and with some of our other Swifters that are being coached. So it's actually working with somebody that I don't know is actually teaching me a lot about the coaching process also, because I have to learn more about their lives, and what they can handle in a day and what their lifestyle is like on the weekends. And so it's bringing, I think, more to my coaching to understand what that is like versus working with Jake, I knew what his lifestyle was like. I know what he does in a typical day, right? Not every day, but I know what his typical day is like. So I can structure that kind of stuff. And, I can also, not like super personal questions, but I can ask questions that are different of somebody who I see more as a friend versus somebody who is newer to me. So I think it's helping me. It's forcing me to diversify even more, which is a good thing, I think, for coaching.
Oh, I think that definitely, that type of challenge definitely expands your mind, toward coaching, the questions you would ask toward coaching. Because what I think what it'll do for you, and I'm not trying to speak for you, obviously, is, when you're working with people that you do know, I think there's questions that we don't necessarily ask because
Also that, yeah.
we we think we know the answer, so we don't ask the question. But you never, again, you never know what's going on in somebody's, life, world, brain, and you think how often have you ever said, you really think you know a person, and then they say something, they do something that you don't expect. And when you're trying to learn your new athlete, there's nothing off limits. You're going to ask everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's going to be interesting about that too is what that person then feels comfortable sharing with me. I can ask the question, but they also have a choice in how much they say. And so that's why for me, I feel like being more honest and sharing more of my experience comes into to play a significant role, because my hope is that, we say like leading by example, right? Like if I tell my athlete, like, yeah, I also struggled with this workout, or I also had this time when I didn't hit all my paces and I felt like crap, right? Even though I know these things. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I ran a 10K and completely fell apart at the end. And one of our other athletes who's been on the show, Rebecca, thankfully she was there to support me. And in my head, I'm saying all the things I say to all my athletes, right? But it's hard for us to take our own advice, even as a coach. And this is why when people ask me, oh, you have a coach? Why don't you just coach yourself? Reasons. Like it's so challenging. And some people can do it. I cannot. But to that point, my hope is that sharing those experiences show people who I'm coaching or people who are just in the Swifters too, that we all have that. Like just because I'm a coach, just because I got my 6 stars, just because these things doesn't mean that I am not also human, excuse me, and have all those same disappointments too. And that's part of it also. And that's why, again, having the coach to help you work through that, it's not just about the workouts. It's about the having the person to go to who truly understands, right? We all have families that are loving and caring and support us, but we may not be able to talk about talk about those things in the same way that we can with our coach, right? That's a completely, maybe we have wonderful friend groups, but maybe they're not as into it as we are. Two things people don't really want to hear about is your marathon and your dreams. Like it's just not as interesting to other people as it is to you.
Everybody wanted to hear about my marathon.
Well, good. I'm glad. No,
I'm totally kidding.
no, they
I'm
didn't.
totally kidding. They did not.
But I think it's so much more than just the physical act of the running coach athlete relationship. It's also that emotional and mental support too.
Okay, so as the last episode when I had Sabrina on, we realized that we could literally talk for days. We were gonna have to cut this one. Excuse me. We're gonna have to cut it. But before I do, let's just make everybody cry. Jake, you're gonna go first on this one. What if there's anything you want to say to Sabrina that you haven't already said about, your coaching relationship, you can, and it can be funny, it can be serious, it can be whatever you want. But I also want to know, like deep down at the end of the day, you know, you got a coach, you paid for a coach, you paid for the training and all of that. Okay. Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Why?
I ran a marathon. like, like I said, something that I was adamant for years that that I had no interest in doing because had some sense of what goes into training for a marathon. It wasn't like just like, oh, like that's real far and that's stupid. Why does anybody do that? It was like no, like the dedication, the time that goes into preparing for that is not something that I want to devote my life to. And so when I did, uh, and I just, like I said earlier, I know I couldn't have done it without her. And so, yeah, that's just an easy question to answer.
Okay, hold on. What's one specific benefit you feel you got out of working with a coach?
Just one.
I'm glad there's
I,
more than one.
I mean,
Like if you could say, I'm glad that I worked with a coach to help me with the marathon because without this one piece, it could not have happened.
well, I mean, I kind of already said it earlier. I mean, with the big one that jumps out is the level-headedness to get me through uh what ended up being like a fairly minor injury, but because of when it happened and where it was on my body was a pretty scary injury. Like it was my knee, and it turned out to be really bad tendonitis, um, and IT band syndrome flaring up. But it, I thought it was over. Like when this was on my 20-mile run when I pulled up at mile, I think it was 12. It wasn't even the longest. I hadn't even got to the point where it was the longest run I had run yet. It was not even a half marathon when I had to pull up and call Sabrina crying to come get picked up. Like I thought it was over. And if I had just been following a Hal Higdon program, it would have been. And instead, I took 5 days off of just running, and then we started testing it out in a measured way with run walks to just see what I could do, and figured out pretty quickly that, like, again, one way or another is going to cross the finish line, and just
It
to
was
have somebody remind me that, like, we can shift goals. This is not this time that we were training for is not the end all be all, and like just like somebody there to remind me that I had what it takes in me to tough it out and adjust expectations and get it done at the end of the day. Um,
for
yeah,
you, it was a voice of reason.
yeah,
And that I think that's probably one of the more important aspects of having a coach is having that voice to reassure you. Um, yeah. Okay, Leah, same bunch of questions to you.
I am going to cry, or I'm going to try really hard not to. Have so, we joked about that I'm really positive at the beginning of races. I'm so grateful to get there, but I actually am like super not necessarily self-confident in like that I can do these things. And so having someone outside who wasn't just saying, "Oh, of course you can do it," in the I love you and so you can do it kind of a way, which some of my friends were doing, but in a I have seen what you have done up until this point, and I know we can get you there, just like Jake said.
yeah.
That was the single best part. Um, I don't know what I haven't already said to Sabrina.
That's okay.
Um, I want to share two other things about the specific arc at the end. So we had our Swifter anniversary party, like 2 days after I realized like my foot was hurting, like, and I didn't know what was wrong at that point. And they were like, oh my God, and Leah signed up for 2 marathons. And I just gave Sabrina a hug and start crying. And I'm like, I don't know that I can run anything. I don't know. She's like, we're going to figure it out. And mine was also tendonitis, but it was 3 inflamed tendons. So they thought it was a stress fracture. So I was almost completely out, but I wasn't. And that's why I went into that race and why I try really hard to reframe a lot of this into just serious gratitude, like that we are lucky enough to be able to move our bodies in this way, that somebody is able to see something in me that I struggle to see in myself at times. And then it is not about time, really, like, because my pace is my pace. But what I will say is that with my second marathon, I went into it with a different goal, not a time goal, because I was scared of actually setting a time goal. And I said, I just want it to be more even. I went out too fast and I went slow and it was harder. And I just want to do even pacing. And I did. And the rest of it is details and doesn't matter. Like at the very end, like Sabrina was running with someone else. Jake's like, Sabrina, come back. Leah's almost at the finish line. Like, come back. And then Sabrina's like, ah! She runs back to like, come run with me. And then we get straight to a water station. And I was like, I'm walking because this is what has been getting me through this whole race successfully. And Sabrina didn't do something that I think many people might think a generic coach would do, which is, no, you got to push harder. She was like, okay, I'm walking this with you. And then at the end of the water break, she's like, go, you got this, girl. And I was like, I do have this. It's amazing. It was really special. And, I didn't want to dedicate a whole summer to marathon training this year. But I didn't want to train for another race without a coach. And so my goals are going to look different for the fall. And I'm really excited just to have different kinds of goals and different kinds of scary as anything workouts, and see where this season takes me.
So I just, I know I don't get this question.
Well, no, you have the last, you have the last statement.
I just like, I don't know how to like describe this. So this is the best way I can think of in this moment. It's like we don't get to play as adults, right? Like we go to work, we have families, like we have homes, whatever they are, to take care of. We have bills to pay. Some of us have mortgages, some of us have cars, like whatever it is we do, it's a lot of adulting, for lack of a better word. And I think one of the best parts of like sitting here listening to the two of them, like I am like, okay, let's go run, guys. Like, let me go give you my schedule. Like, let me get my stuff together and we'll just go like, I get so into it. I get so excited because this is playtime. And yeah, I mean, it's work, of course. Running 15 miles for a training run in July in Chicago is not easy and it is work, but like you get the choice to do that. And to have people who choose to do that and then also choose to put their trust in me to help them do that. I mean, it's extremely humbling. It makes me really grateful to have these relationships, and it brings me so much joy when I see them succeed. And whatever that success looks like. I also just want to make a disclaimer. I am a coach who doesn't always have athletes get injured. So
I know, I really couldn't tell that.
I was like, this whole time I'm like, oh my God, we have the two athletes who had injuries. Oh no, what does that say about me as a coach? Like, and I say that jokingly. I really don't think anybody's making that assumption. But on a serious note, I think that makes everyone even stronger as both coaches and athletes when you have to go through something like an injury. Because sometimes we can look out there and be like, does that person ever get injured? Does that person ever stop? And we certainly have some of those people in the Swifters. And it's awesome that they can just keep going and going and going. But the reality is that most of us will have some sort of injury at some point, whether it's a minor one, a major one, something that sets us back 3 days, something that sets us back 3 months. The reality is most of us, especially as we get older and we keep running, things are going to come up, which is another plug for a coach to help you work through that. But, and of course, a coach's advice never substitutes for medical advice. I just want to make that clear too. But at the end of the day, when you see things like this, when you see Jake bounce back from an injury so close to the marathon and finish something he never thought he would do, and when you see Leah back to back finish 2 marathons in which she never was going to do one,
So
it's
stupid.
incredible to know what humans can do when they have the support and they have the determination to do that. So, I just say I'm thankful to these two and all my other athletes that put that trust in me, because ultimately I am just as excited as you to see you cross that finish line. And that finish line is whatever you make it. As we said before, it's a race. It's a 3 months of just being consistent. It's whatever it is. And I'm just humbled to be there for it.
So with that, I extend so much thanks to Jake and Leah for being willing to come on the show and share your stories. Sabrina, you can come back whenever you want. I
Thank
know you're
you.
going to be back, so it doesn't matter. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much to all the listeners of Start Lines and Swag Bags. If you didn't listen, I may still do this because I learn things, but I do this because um, of the person who offhandedly says to me, "Hey, because of you, I signed up for a marathon. Because of you, I got back into running." Because if I can just do that for one person, I've changed one person's life. And you know what? I love that. I mean, why not? But as before we sign off, um, Brett and Bear do want to thank, oh, I'm trying to get him in focus. Want to thank you all,
Oh my God.
and especially Sabrina, for being on the show. See?
You
There's
have to
our
So,
describe to people what that is if they're not watching the YouTube video. They got it.
I know. So, you may not follow me on Instagram. Sabrina and I do share a very love of firefighters and cats. And for my move-in present, she bought me an Australian firefighter catalog and a calendar. Sorry, a catalog. That would have been awesome.
Ooh, for mail
No.
order.
And the calendar had come late, so I had been slowly rolling out months. And March just happens to have a firefighter holding a black cat that the name is Bear, and Sabrina has a black cat named Bear. I mean, you couldn't have made this up anymore if you could have. All right, with that, we are really going to sign off. Thank you, as always, for listening to Start Lines and Swag Bags. Thank you for supporting the Flying Pig Project. You do have to embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. You never know what's going to happen. Am I going to do a marathon? I don't know. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Have
Thank
a good-
you.
thank
The
you.
reactions are not working. Really? There we go.
No.
It's so good.